So take me to July 4th, 2012, the discovery of Higgs boson.
So this is really fun because the people searching for the Higgs, it's a community, and the entire community knew that the LHC was coming online. So even though many of us had been working on the Fermilab accelerators, a lot of us were transitioning to the CERN accelerator. So we were in the very funny business of wearing our Fermilab detector people hats, trying desperately to find the Higgs boson at Fermilab, while simultaneously wearing our CERN hats, knowing that CERN was going to be able to find it if it existed. And so, we were a little neurotic, kind of wanted, our old stuff to work. And there was an awful lot of people on both experiments.
Did you have a sense that one of the two places would be able to find the Higgs? First, did you think the Higgs boson existed? And second, did you think that these accelerators have the chance to find them?
So I was cognizant of the fact that the Higgs boson might not exist, but there was a lot of evidence pointing in the direction that it might be. I knew that both experiments, the Fermilab accelerator and the CERN accelerator, would either find or rule out the Higgs if it existed.
Rule out?
Well, that's a possibility. I mean, maybe the Higgs theory was wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Until you know it's there, it might be wrong. It's like dark matter. People talk about dark matter. It might not be real. I mean, it probably is, but it might not be.
So you knew at these energy levels, you should be able to find the Higgs boson.
Yes. So that's the nice thing about this kind of physics, because there was a theory. That theory made predictions. Now, there were parameters in the theory we didn't know. If the mass was this, we'd get this thing. If the mass was this, we get this thing. But we could do the calculation for every conceivable Higgs mass. And so then we could search. Look, well, let's say the Higgs mass is 100 in some units. Did we see it there? No. Then it's not 100. Well, let's look at 103. Is it there? No. So we could do that. Both accelerators could either find it or definitively rule out the predictions of simple Higgs theory. 100% guaranteed. However, the CERN accelerator had 10 times the collisions per second and 3.5 times the energy. So remember when I said with the top quarks, it was like 6 months for 19 versus 1 a second? There's no question. The writing is on the wall. The LHC was going to have an easier time of it if it was real. However, but I'm a Fermilab scientist, and we wanted Fermilab. Come on, we want Fermilab to win.
Course.
Not, So we were busting our butt, and we had done what I said. We had ruled out this region. We had certain mass ranges. We knew it wasn't there, and we finally said, if there was a Higgs boson, if it existed, which we didn't know at the time, its mass was somewhere between, if I recall, between like 120 and 145. All right, we'd ruled out all the other stuff. And so, wearing our CERN hat, we said, okay, we're going to find that. But we were really, really, really trying to do it. Now, if we had had another 2 years or maybe 3 years of running the Fermi accelerator, Fermilab would have discovered or ruled out, or in this case, turning out discovered the Higgs boson because it's a real thing. We would have found it without a question. But we didn't have enough data in July of 2012. We needed a couple more years. Unfortunately, in 2008, or fortunately, the LHC had turned on. It broke. They had to fix it. Turned on again in 2010. It ran poorly in 2011. In 2012, they pushed up their sleeves and said, let's do this. And it turned on. And so, there was this, the Fermilab knew if it didn't have it now, it wasn't, it was too late. Anyways, 2012 rolls around, and like 2 days before the announcement at CERN was July 4th. So 2 days before that, Fermilab made a measurement and said, we can rule out certain regions, but certain regions we can't rule out. But what we know, and this is important, if the Higgs boson exists, it must be in this region for which we are not capable yet of ruling out. So that's where we were 2 days before the LHC said, we got it. That was July 4th, 2012.
So detecting the Higgs boson confirmed the existence of the Higgs field, the mechanism through which fundamental particles like electrons and quarks acquire mass in the Standard Model.
Correct. Although, let's be very specific of what we did then. We found a particle consistent with the existence of the Higgs boson. There were alternative theories at the time that predicted not one, but multiple Higgs bosons. So there's a theory called supersymmetry, which said that there was not one, but 5 Higgs bosons. The standard original 1964 Higgs theory says there were 1. And so all we really knew at the time was we found a theory. We did not necessarily confirm that Higgs was right. We found data that said that it looked like Higgs was right. But until we ran for longer, we were unable to rule out other alternative theories. So that's the deal. Now, in the fullness of time, it is, after all, 14 years now later, we have been able to basically rule out some of those other things. And by now, we have validated things. We found the mass of the particle. We know the spin of the Higgs boson. It has a spin of 0. We have discovered the Higgs boson decays. It preferentially decays into the heaviest particles it can through energy conservation. Can't decay into top quarks. It's too light to decay into top quarks, but it can decay into bottom quarks. It can decay into W and Z particles, can decay into a weird way into photons. And we have looked for all of the hypothesized decays of the original Higgs theory, and we have validated that it decays in those ways at the rates that theory predicted. And so now, in the fullness of time, I'm pretty comfortable saying Peter Higgs and Robert Brout and Francois Englert and his colleagues, they were right back in the 60s. But we weren't sure on July 4th. All we knew is we found a particle consistent. But the thing is, with these discoveries, they're often just barely discoveries. It takes a while to go and do the more complex, detailed measurements, and that's what we've done.
So at the time, I remember it being called, referred to as the God particle. You also had a minor in theology. So throwing that all together, so calling it the God particle is speaking to the importance, the potential importance of discovering this particle. Do you think that is in some degree justified? Like if we look at the big impact of it on the history of physics, how important was it to find and show that the Higgs field is real?
Well, I don't think it is as important as, for instance, some of Einstein's stuff. I mean, it's an important prediction. Like the prediction of quarks was very important and interesting in validating this. The Higgs was kind of like validating that quarks existed. It's an important stepping stone, and I do not wish to denigrate it in any way. But there's ones that changed the way we thought about the world, like Einstein did. It wasn't that sort of thing. And there is a funny story. So the reason they call it the God particle is this book by Leon Lederman, and if you read his book, he says, well, you know, we call it the God particle, but we should call it the goddamn particle because it's been causing us so much trouble trying to find it. And Leon ran Fermilab, and he wrote a foreword for one of my books. And you know, I talked to him. He was a really funny guy. And the real truth was, the book was called The God Particle because his publisher thought it would sell more copies. but you know, then that got into the mindset of the reporters and so forth, and we called it the God Particle. Leon never really thought of it as anything to do with a religious or even, I mean, he was an incredible jokester, the goddamn particle.
It is a really important part of our model of the universe.
It is.
That there's this field that it gives mass to some particles and not others. That's
right. It's a huge thing, but it was part of the Standard Model. The Standard Model had known forces, it had known particles, it had all that. The Higgs boson, the one thing that is true is it was the last unvalidated piece of the Standard Model. The Standard Model does not answer all questions, which is why we have unanswered questions in physics, but it was a punctuation point, end of about 50 years of discovery and searching, where we finally were able to say the Standard Model While incomplete, it's mostly right as far as it goes.